Hello. If you've got a child with any form of special educational need or disability, then they're far more vulnerable to a whole host of different range of things that might harm them or abuse them. So I'm going to talk to you today about safeguarding, and I've got some top tips for you, places you can go and information you can find. Okay. My name is Sarah Jane Critchley. I'm the author of A Different Joy, The Parent's Guide to Living Better with Autism, Dyslexia, ADHD and more. And I was also involved in the expert panel for this particular book, Safeguarding Children with Autism, which is particularly helpful. I mentioned this in my video on fabricated and induced illness. If you haven't seen that, have a look for the link below and go and check that out. That's a really good overview. So, what do we know? Let's get going. Oh. Okay. So, what is safeguarding and who's actually responsible for it? The government's guidance, this is a piece of statutory government called Working Together to Safeguard Children, explains that everybody who has contact with a child is responsible for making sure that they are safe and that they have an environment within which they can grow and be healthy and develop. Now obviously there are limits to that, but that's the basic principle underlying everything. And it says in the guidance that everybody who works with children has a responsibility for keeping them safe. So that can be anyone from teachers, schools, clubs, police, local authorities, social services, health, absolutely anybody who has contact with children should have a safeguarding policy that says what they'll do to keep them safe and what the process is they have to follow if they have a concern about a child and if they're worried about them for any reason. And it's all about protecting children from harm. So what sort of things might they be worried about, and what types of abuse and neglect can happen, and why specifically are children with SEN more vulnerable? Let's just talk a bit about them. Domestic abuse. So we do know that families under stress have an impact on the amount of domestic abuse that happens. Watching that is abuse on the child. A child should not be subject to any domestic abuse. They should be safe within the home. But if that's happening around them or it's happening to them, that's abuse. Sexual abuse. Lots of our children with SEN are often quite naive and are so more vulnerable to being manipulated and told that it's just what you need to do to be in a relationship, and that isn't the case. So they're vulnerable to sexual abuse. Vulnerable to neglect, yes, sometimes. Some children are in very difficult positions. I don't think that's specifically related to SEN though. Online abuse, absolutely. Lots of our children are brilliant at using technology and are able to do that. That means that they're out there, that may be where they're operating more frequently. They may be able to get their way around lots of different protections that you put in place. There are some of our autistic children that could find their way around a firewall with both arms behind their backs and their eyes shut because they're that good at it. So online abuse is a worry. We worry also about physical abuse. We know that bullying is an issue, and mugging and abuse of those who have learning difficulties is a particular issue as well. Emotional abuse, yes, definitely. Same thing, just no physical attack. It can be emotional rather than physical. Child sexual exploitation. If you don't understand what a normal relationship is, you're far more likely to be abused. We know that there's a link between children who are out of school and child sexual exploitation, and children who have SEN are far more likely to be out of school. Female genital mutilation. There isn't a direct link to SEN, but that is another form of child abuse. Bullying and cyberbullying. Autistic children tell us that bullying is the biggest single issue for them. Sometimes that isn't in physically, it can be online as well, and cyberbullying comes into the house, comes into the bedroom, so it's a worry. Child trafficking again. Children disappear from time to time. Some children are wanderers, and that can be a concern. If a child's a wanderer, they're more likely to get into trouble. And children from care. are far more likely to end up being trafficked, which is being moved from one place to another, either within the country or outside. Not specifically an SEN issue though. Grooming, yes. So people not being who they say they are online, people being giving presents and are children because they're more naive, thinking that that means that they're liked or that they're loved or that that is important or that that is part of a normal relationship, and then being led into situations that are incredibly harmful. And harmful sexual behaviour. So our children can sometimes, because they don't understand the boundaries, can do behaviours that could cause concern and could lead them to damaging either themselves or other people. And knowing what the difference is between a normal behaviour and a harmful behaviour is really important. So I've got 6 top tips. I'm trying to keep it very simple today. The top tips. Number 1, make all learning explicit, and don't assume that your child knows what you mean or how relationships work. You have to explain everything, and explain why it's an issue, and explain that people might not be telling the truth, even if they do. So that's one of the most important things. Teach social understanding in everything. Make it routine. Talk about it when you go out to the shops, when you're looking at a programme on television. Why might somebody have behaved that way? If they've got a situation at school, what do you think the other person might be thinking? Why do you think they might be behaving like that? What do you think they might want to get from the situation? All of that needs to be taught explicitly. How do you manage your money? How do you know that make sure that your money stays yours and that somebody else doesn't take it from you or manipulate you into paying for things for them? All of the things like that. There is a huge amount. When I was looking at this, I started thinking, oh my God, there's so much. We have as parents, we have huge gaps in our expertise in terms of safeguarding and the risks that some of our children face. If you're thinking about things like what's online and how vulnerable they might be, if you're as old as I am, you wouldn't necessarily have grown up in that environment. You wouldn't necessarily know what games are out there. You wouldn't know what sort of platforms your children might be attracted to. So it's really important that we learn alongside our children to fill these gaps in our knowledge to make sure that we can keep them safe. Lots of schools offer online security and online safety courses for parents. Go to them, they're fantastic. Another place to go is CEOP, C-E-O-P, and they have a site called I think it's called Think You Know, and I've got the link to it down the bottom in the description. There are online courses you can sit down with your child and go through with them, which explain what the risks are and how to stay safe online. The next top tip is don't assume that a developmental lag means I don't need to know. So your child may be behaving in a much more naive way. They may behave as a much younger person than their chronological age. So they may be 10 but be behaving like an 8-year-old, or be 15 but be behaving like a 12-year-old. Now that developmental lag means that you're more likely to be responding to them differently, and you may be responding to them based on their developmental age. Now that's great in terms of helping them, but the risks that they face tend to be based on how old they look, not how old they are. So we need to think about the risks that our children may face and then interpret that back to the developmental age where they are and put it in the sort of way that they can understand, which is my next top tip, that our communication has to match both their age and their developmental stage. So you wouldn't be talking about what safe sex was in the same way to a 6-year-old as you would to a 16-year-old. But if someone has the developmental age of a 6-year-old, you need them to be aware of those issues and how to keep themselves safe without terrifying them, without scaring them. So it's around pitching it at the right level. And that can be quite tricky. If in doubt, go to your school and ask. And that's the final thing, which is ask what's being taught at school, find out what it is, look through it and work out if it needs to be adapted. So there are some very good specialist resources from lots of local authorities. They're very good at adapting things. It's worth having a look at that. and they might come in and do some work specifically with your child. But if all else fails, when they're doing things like sex and relationships education, ask to see the materials they're using, because you may need to adapt what they're being told. You might need to prepare your child for what they're actually going to see, and to explain it in more detail, to give them more accurate anatomical details. There's an awful lot I could say about that, but I don't want to lead you down a particular track right now. So let's just go for a little bit of specific help and guidance that you can have. There's a really good website here called Parents Protect, which is protecting children from sexual abuse. And if you are concerned about a child and you think they might be behaving in a way that you're not sure that's right, that's a really good place to go to. Or if you're worried about anybody else who's connected with a child and you want to find out how to get them to stop doing that, that's a really good site. Have a look. It's called Parents Protect. Think You Know is a site from CEOP, which will tell you about online safety. Really good one there. The National Autistic Society has a lovely film here, which is on YouTube. You can just download, use this link, and it's around safeguarding children with autism. It's a case study based on a particular school and North Yorkshire Local Authority. It's a really good one. Highly recommend you go and have a look at it. And the final one is a brilliant blog from Justin Price, who's the head teacher of Fremantle School, which is a specialist school for children who are autistic, which talks about the importance of teaching the social context and how that applies to pretty much everything. He's got a huge list of things that have to be taught explicitly, but there's a link to that as well. So I know that's a huge amount. We're just touching the very, very tip of an iceberg. If there's a specific issue that you've got, please let me know and I'll do a film specifically for that. I'm very happy to do that, but this is a huge area and I just want to give you a few top tips to start you off. Hope that helps. Don't forget, there's more details, more videos available at differentjoy.com videos. Pick up a copy of the book and follow me on social media. I hope that's been helpful for you. Let me know what you think. Ask any questions in the box down below and don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Speak to you soon. Bye.